Hi, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, doing well, doing well. Okay, yeah. So like Brian said, wherever you want a little bit more help on, I'd be happy to listen. Right. So wherever you want to start. Okay.
I'll be starting from the second half of Beethoven 110, the last movement.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Very good. Very good, Andrew. Very good. Okay. Things that I liked your composure, right? And as far as I can tell through these, through Zoom, right? I can tell that you know what sounds you are trying to aim for, okay? And so I think those things are very, very admirable, especially when you're playing, right? Now, what I want to do is have a little bit more of your ownership of the piece, right? I feel like you're still sort of, it feels like you're still interpreting this piece, and it's not yet become part of your molecular structure yet. Okay, so what I mean by it is when we get to this sort of thing, right? When we have, can you hear me when I play?
Yes, I can.
Okay, okay, yeah. So this theme, right? Right. This is our sort of second time hearing it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Before we had this what was the key? But I remember it was a lot of flats. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. So perfect. Okay. So when we get here, right? Because this is in sort of, I don't want to say that G minor is necessarily a shinier key, right? But G minor is a little bit more of a sorrowful key, right? When we think of G minor things, right? When we think of the Mozart G minor, right? Or any really G minor, that key itself is completely expressive. It's sorrowful, right? So I think when we get here, it's not like the beginning in which we have sort of hopelessness, right? There's a difference between hopelessness and sorrowful, right? When you're sorrowful, yeah, okay, there is a little bit of hopelessness, but if anything, you're just very, sad, right? So I think here we need to think about the balance a little bit, right? This thing, right? It's in a very low register, and you have three notes that are pretty close to each other, right? Other composers would have probably made that type of spacing, right? So that you have, right? So you get to hear the strings reverberate. But because it's so close, right? It's a solid thing, right? It feels solid, right? So when we have this, right? I know he writes piano, right? But we need a chord to that sound, because this is a long note that stretches over 1, 2, before this. And then we go up. Right? So actually, it should feel like you have so much sadness that you can't even sing it out. Right? Look at how many rests Beethoven writes. Rest, 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 and then more rest, rest. Right? It's almost as if you can't get your words out. Oh, beautiful, nice. We have a screen. Yeah, right. It's almost as if you're trying to say something, but you're losing your breath, right? And you can't even almost muster the energy to speak it out, right? So can we try can we try it one more time? I want it to feel like it's one thing you're trying to get out, right? Like saying like, I just lost my home, right? But instead of like this being one phrase, and then this is another thing, and then this is another thing, right? I want you to be like, this is no longer my home, right? It took so long for me to tell you that one sentence, right? But notice how much more heartfelt that is, rather than saying, I no longer have a home, I don't live here anymore, blah, 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 right? So it's Yeah, can we try it?
Yeah.
Okay, good, Andrew. Really, really good. Just a tiny thing. What do we do when we see diminuendo?
When we see diminuendo,
What do we do right at that spot?
right at that
What?
spot,
Yeah. What do we do? Just a rule of thumb. What do we do when we see diminuendo?
we start out louder and play softer.
Exactly. When you see diminuendo, play loud. Okay, because when you have because usually diminuendo is the loudest part in the phrase, right? Now conversely, what do we do at crescendo?
Soft to loud.
Exactly. The crescendo means you just play soft so that you have room to grow, right? Diminuendo, you start loud so you have room to decay, right? So it's the same thing here, right? From here to, this should be excruciatingly soft. And then we're growing this, right? The re is not necessarily that much less than the E flat, right? But this, because the diminuendo is at here, right? This is when we get softer. And then basically within one beat, right? You go from, because the crescendo is there, right? So then the crescendo takes a lot, much smaller sort of thing. And then we keep going. This is, right? We keep going until we strike that diminuendo. The diminuendo is the loudest part of that phrase, right? Okay, can we try that one more time, starting from here? Beautiful, right? I think that's much better in a sense that it now feels like one long idea has passed, right? And actually, you know, it's funny. A lot of times when I give concerts, you know, sometimes the best praise is, oh, it felt so short, right? Now, why is that a great sort of praise, right? Oh, that feels so short. It's because when a phrase happens well, time flies, right? When something doesn't, you know, really happen well, right? If something, you know, drags along, then the audience really feels it's like, oh man, why is this taking so long, right? It feels longer than it is, right? So when we have a phrase, see, when you first played it, it was noticeable that I felt sort of lost in the phrase and I didn't really, like it felt longer than it should have been. But when you just played it, I was taken by your sort of long range thinking that I didn't even register that it took the same amount of time that as when you played it before, right? So that's the magic of really planning your phrases. Okay, good. So let's go on. When we and then can we start from here? Right? This is a very interesting chord, right? Because before we kind of went from this three note molecule, right? Here. And then when we come back, now we have this 4-note molecule. It's thicker, right? And not only do we not start on a fifth, we start on a third, right? So it's already sunken even lower, right? The expression, we've already announced that we no longer have a home. Now we're in the thick of it, right? Now we're pulling at the heartstrings, right? Now we're really in the mud. Now we're at least for this one beat it is. Until, a raising, right? The 6th degree is a raising sort of, right? And then we're raising for how many measures? 1, 2. Basically, I would say 2.5 because I want to hear. Yeah, right. And actually, you have the choice of, let's say, because Beethoven only wrote the crescendo until here, right? You have the option of doing this part receding, right? So you can do. Right, you have the option, right? But then again, would that be a smart option? Because next he writes a double piano. So then if we play that soft, then we sacrifice the contrast, right? So maybe you would want to do more and then right, less, okay? Can we try that part? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so what does Beethoven do here, right? Right when you have this beautiful chord, you have this 1, 2, 3, 2, right? He kind of has this mini hemiola thing here, right? So he had, and then we, right? So I think, I mean, that's about as interesting as the left hand can get. Like given the circumstance here, right? So I would definitely bring that a little bit out, right? And when I say bring out, I don't necessarily mean play it louder, right? But just so that you're aware that the harmonic rhythm changed, you can leave it a little bit more of a, you can expand the time around it. So you can do 1, 2, and then go forward. Okay, that's what you can do. Okay, and then again, and then poco crescendo. We start this again super soft. Okay, can we just start right on the poco crescendo? Good. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. And then I trust you know how to do the rest of that phrase. I want to hear a little bit more of this sort of this thing, right? Because this is a very peculiar thing, right? On the piano, it right, and there's part of me that wants to give you the benefit of the doubt because we're on Zoom right now, right? But I want to make sure that this thing is kind of like the reverberation, right, of the entire orchestra at this point, right? Let's say like in the beginning it was, you know, a string quartet, right? And then now the second stands come in, and then the third stands, and then the fourth stand, right? And then full orchestra, right? So I want to feel, especially after this sort of torrent of nothing, of this chord is very, very interesting, right? This should be just a glimmer of sunshine at daybreak, right? It's been the night so far. This is a glimmer of sunshine. So So, but then, yeah, but again, don't give anything away. They should be super soft. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? And notice it's always on the third beat, on the third group. Of the third beat of each 3-note group, right? It's always ba, 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 right? So actually these notes, we need to always feel that they're upbeats, that they're not downbeats, right? So it shouldn't feel like this.
Yeah.
Right? I want you to then see, and actually this helps when you count inside, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? And actually, physically, my hand is very loose in the wrist, and I'm not playing down into the keys.
Okay.
I'm playing in the direction of this blackboard, right? So actually, with the pedal, you do this sort of motion, right? So in a sense, my hand. Can I see it? Good. Yeah. So you're basically sliding into the keys, right? And then with each motion, right, you not only count each upbeat, right, but you get more and more sound, right? And just a tiny tip, what you can do in the beginning, right, because the notes don't actually change, right, but your voicing can change. You can voice this first with the outer voices, right? So more this, right? And then as you get louder, your middle voices can get louder, right? And then when we get the re, right, then we can really, pile on the thickness, so to speak, right? And then again, this diminuendo, this is the loudest of that phrase, right? This, and then you go softer. And then from here, it's a complete shift in tempo. Right? Okay. Can we just try maybe these things? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Here. Much better, right? Now I felt, yeah, just don't forget when we get to the last one, right? This one should be very full, right? Almost as if all 90 instruments at the end of this, they all play this one unison note, that they've all concentrated to this note. And then the nucleus dissolves. Okay? So maybe right from here, and then go on. Okay, beautiful. Okay, now I don't have too much to say about the fugue. I know it's very difficult, especially with the inverted subject in this iteration, right? But I do want you to feel a little bit more the difference between short notes and long notes, right? And actually, we do this in Bach all the time, right? When we actually almost have like an unspoken rule in the longer notes are our destinations, right? We go to the ba ba da da dum ba ba da 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 ba, right? And then the smaller, like the shorter note values are our transitions, right? They're the journey to those destinations, right? So what do I mean by that? So this this is because they're all long notes, right? We can have sort of like a more swinging fashion, right? They're all very important. But then this is the first short note, right? This can have a little bit more of a moving sort of a character, right? And then, but then this note is long. Right? So every time we go to a long note, so this is long, this is short, this is long, short, short, long, right? So that we, I don't want you to super exaggerate it, right? We're not swinging on vines in the jungle, right? But as long as we are aware that the sound is different from a long note, right? A destination note versus a journeying note, right? I think it'll make a lot of these things sound much better, right? Right now, you're playing everything beautifully, right? But there is a tiny, part of this that is a bit thick sometimes, right? And the thickness comes from kind of prioritizing everything rather than the things that are not really that important, right? So I would rather you actually, can we start where it has a little bit more voices? Can we start when we get to here? Yeah. Okay, good. Right now, okay, I know it's very difficult, right? But the inner voice, right? This actually, this always reminds me of Star Wars for some reason, right? But see, this thing is actually, I mean, of course, it gives us that suspense because we're moving from this, right? So, but then these notes, right? It's not that 3 notes are all important, right?
Yeah.
I think it's this, the first of the slow. Yeah. That's a little bit more important because that'll give us that sort of it's almost like an injection, right? It injects us with something, right? But as soon as we hear it, back off, right? No longer do we need to hear that, right? Because then it makes things thicker because this person now comes in, right? And then again, right? So the more we think in terms of things coming in and receding, right? And really only having to do, having to really just contribute that sort of like 1 second of attention and then peeling away, right? I want you to, I think that's a better way. Can we try from there? Yeah, that's much better. Yeah, now that actually has, like, it felt like it was in flight, right? And things were getting much more excited on a sort of, not in a busy way per se, right? But in a very thriving sort of way, right? And I think that's what we need to recreate, especially in this last fugue, right? The fugue has to always feel like it's full of life, right? You're creating an ecosystem with all sorts of different animals, critters, plants, everything, right? And how they interact is based on, how suitable the environment is, right? If there's a bunch of, like I don't know, if there's a bunch of radiation, okay, well, everything's gonna die, right? So we need to, thin things out so that certain things we can appreciate, right? You're walking through the swamp, okay, well, of course there's like yucky algae everywhere, but there's a one lone tulip, right? And you see it at, it's gorgeous, right? And that happens a lot in this thing, right? And then the other thing is, we need to know when we've built up something and then we're allowed to build something new, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be one giant trajectory, from this all the way up until the end, right? We have different spots that we decide to build, you know, this part of the sandcastle, and then okay, and now we have this part to build, right? And so Beethoven marks that sometimes, especially with his tempo markings, right? And then the shift in texture, right? Especially when you go high, that versus right? Right. So we have a change in texture. So then that leads us to, you know, thinking, okay, well, maybe I can, you know, start something new here. Okay. Can we try some of that? Do you want to try from the Meno Allegro?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that was good. We need a little bit more of a preparation into it, right? Now, all of that was fine, and then, right? So actually, all of these things, right? All of these things are sort of, they're kind of like the background things to this line. And then, right?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
what we need to hear, okay? And lead up to that, right? So that it doesn't just feel, oh, suddenly it's faster.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's basically what I wanted to tell you about in this one. And I know we're running out of time, so yeah. For this fugue, it's definitely about how much you can, you know, make things still thrive even though a lot of things are going on, right? And that really just means you have to isolate things that you want the audience to hear, right? The audience, oftentimes if we don't choose what we want to hear, the audience will hear none of it, right? And that's the paradox, right? You're playing all these notes, but if we don't choose what they want to hear, they don't really hear all the notes. They kind of just hear none of the notes, right? They just hear a mass, and then they just think, oh man, like why is this piece still going on? Okay, so definitely my biggest tip for this one is, right, to always know what you want the audience to hear, right? And to be a little bit thinner, especially when you're carving out and building your structures, so that it's easier for you to pick things out, right? Because everything else is kind of hushed, you know. And I don't want to say sluggish; they're still very thriving, right? But it's just not in the forefront, right? And that way, I think it's going to make a bigger difference in this piece, right? And yeah, and so I hope to hear you in the future then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Great.